Welcome to the Million Vegan Grandmothers podcast. And today I have Darren Ginn, beautiful musician. And I met Darren through a friend of mine, beautiful Jeff Francis, who started a company called, not a company, an organization of artists and musicians called Bonobo TV. And can you carry on with that, Darren? Can you tell us a little bit about Bonobo?
Yes, certainly.
Bonobo. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, Bonobo TV. Actually, Jeff started that many years ago, and he had a run of success with it. Then things changed during his career, and it kind of faded into the background a little bit. It just became dormant. So once we got together a few years ago, and we gathered our international production team, so he decided to bring Bonobo TV back. So now we have Bonobo TV Publishing. So, and we do self-publishing. So Bonobo covers a wide range of multimedia productions. We have our writers, we have our filmmakers, we have our musicians. So, and we're doing a lot of collaborations. So it's very alive and active.
So for people that don't know, the bonobo primate is a love-based primate that's, female, mostly female run, the feminine energy of the calming of back to love, the energy back to love. Is that how you describe it, or how would you like to describe it?
As far as the figure of bonobo, yes, then it's a very calming aspect, a very unifying aspect. So we do the balance of the masculine and the feminine, and fortunately, the people that are involved have got that great balance going on. So we don't have anything that's weighted too heavily from one side to the other. So we feel very fortunate to be able to have that.
Well, we're so happy to have you here, Darren. And I want to dive into your music, a little bit about your history of your music, and then coming to be a vegan activist through your music, and then sending the message of love and peace, and just share a little bit about that. Because I believe music is so cellular and so microbial, actually, and we know it actually changes the water even in our body, the messages of the water. So, and we're mostly water. So I'm actually just editing a piece of my work right now from my book on the HEAL protocol, and the H stands for water. And I just know that somehow when I've listened to a beautiful piece of music, I'm changed somehow.
Yes, it does that. It's absolutely goes across the board for everything. That's why they call it the universal language. How far did you want me to go back with my history?
Well, share whatever you like. We would be happy to hear a little bit about your history and how music has been such a big part of your life for so long.
Well, going back to the beginning, to my roots, really paints a big picture. So I can encapsulate that. I started playing organ when I was 7 years old. My mother was the musician in the family. My father, as they say, couldn't carry a tune in the bucket, but since they were born in the 20s of last century, obviously, and things for my father were a bunch of the boys were whooping it up at the Malamute Saloon, things that they had to learn for school. Well, my mother was musical. She played by ear, and she also played from music as well. So we had a little spinet organ, and I was playing one time. She heard me playing around. So she came over and she played something, and I repeated it to her. So next week I was in organ classes. So that lasted for a year with that particular teacher. And I actually asked my parents, I was 8 years old. I asked them for another teacher. So I said, I'm not learning enough from this. This is going nowhere. So they put me with a world-class accordionist, and he was also a pianist and organist. So I started my journey on organ, playing classical and contemporary. So I learned the whole thing with doing classical organ with a lot of the pedal work, and then contemporary organ where I was able to play pop tunes and classics. So that started it. And coming from that, in junior high school, I gravitated to piano, and I played both all the way through college. And that's when I shifted over more to piano studies. And when I finished out with college, that's when I began my jazz studies. And that was strictly piano. So, but I was playing electronic instruments at the same time, because that was making yourself viable, going out playing. The first instrument that I got, my parents bought me a portable organ. And that's when I was 16. And they said, okay, go out and start working. So just go out and start playing. Because I actually started playing out professionally when I was 15. And I was working with some of the people. We had one of the youngest big bands in the country while we were in junior high school. So some of my friends were involved with music. And one particularly, they were doing a lot of, you would walk into their house and you thought you were going back into the 1940s. Everything was big band. So that's where I listened to a lot of the big band music. But my parents' collection of music, fortunately, was very eclectic, from classical to jazz. Back during those days, they would have these cocktail albums that the adults would have. Everybody's got their highballs and their mixed drinks, and they get together for their parties. And they would put on these record albums, which were a compilation of different artists and different styles. So they had that. They also had Broadway. So one of the first Broadway albums that I was exposed to, which in my opinion still was the best musical ever written, West Side Story. And so I listened tremendously to their record collection. So all of that solidifying in started that process with me of really thinking about music in such a way that it did have an effect on people, because it certainly did on me when I was listening to different styles of music. So once I started getting a little bit more aware of that, which was actually in high school. And that's actually when I began my metaphysical journey by reading, it was my brother's collection. I went through his books one time and I found Ram Dass, Be Here Now. So that changed the entire equation. And when I started looking at that and started thinking about music and the effects on music, and when I would play, watching the emotions of people, watching how they reacted to it. So that really started it. And it was also during that time in the early 70s is when I started being an activist. And that started when I was practicing Buddhism, Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism. One of the drummers that I worked with, who we're still friends with, brought me in and said, come and check this thing out. And he said, Nam-myo Renge Kyo. So I said, okay, let me check this out. So that led to doing some protests, some marches. We were doing things in Washington, D.C. We were a part of a huge national march where Buddhists came in from all over the country. We had a huge peace march, a tremendous fireworks display at the end. And we also were doing some things in New York with also for peace and for the environment. We were at the Palladium in New York. We were building human towers and doing just a lot of different activity. So that really started it for me. And I just continued from there, and I started tying everything together. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about how all of these things were relating, looking at the changes that were going on in the world around me, and fortunately had some very observant friends. And you know as well as anybody, when you start your metaphysical journey and you start exploring these things, then what comes to you is more of an awareness.
Mhm.
So when you open up to that, and something that really has stuck with me all these years from reading Ram Dass, Krishnamurti, Sai Baba, but from Krishnamurti, The Observer and the Observed.
Hmm.
So that became an ongoing mantra, day and night, practically for a number of years. So it brought a really huge amount of increased awareness. So during that time with my music, I gravitated to many different styles because I had
But
studied.
you're still you're out of high school at this time. You said that you started really looking at the interconnection in high school, which is amazing. And then now you're in your 20s or 30s and you're still making and weaving all these connections around
Yes.
music and peace and the ability to help people change. And were you vegan at this time yet? When did you go vegan?
No, I was vegetarian at the time. It was 1975, I think it was. I gave up meat for a month. I decided something just clicked in my head. Just stop for a month just to clean out my system. I completely lost my taste for meat. So that's when I started cooking my own meals. Kind of bothered my mother a little bit. So I was still living at home. And my mother's side of the family is Armenian. So I grew up with a tremendous variety of foods. So here I am in the kitchen. I bought a cookbook, an Indian cookbook. So here I am making my own curries, and I was making chapatis and millet burgers and things. So that began the vegetarian journey. And it's a little over 20 years now that I've been vegan. And with my wife, Ali, like Muhammad Ali, floats like a butterfly, stings like a bee, and she does. We were both vegetarian for many years. Fortunately for her, she actually could not digest meat as a young girl. So it was built in for her. She was vegetarian. So since I had gone vegetarian, and that was a good meeting place for us, as you know, it's much easier if with your partner that you're eating the same way. So I had just been waiting for her to give me the signal. She said, I'm ready to go vegan. So that's where that journey.
Beautiful. It's so amazing to share that partnership with, because veganism isn't just about what we eat. It's participating in a world of true ahimsa, so that we become homo ahimsa and
Yes.
homo sapiens, which aren't very wise. We become the people of non-harm, ahimsa meaning non-harm, maybe the most beautiful word we've ever heard. So
Yes.
20 years ago, that's a long journey for you. And how has your music changed since you become vegan?
Well, just bringing in that level of compassion. The real change happened 3 years ago. So even though I've been vegan all those years, and by the way, as you know, also, your level of advocacy and activism can have a big change when you go vegan. So when I did that, it was right around the time of social media, and Facebook came up. So I just went wild. I was an overposter because I felt so strongly about the connection to veganism, what it stood for. And the more that I delved into it and realized that this has an effect on everything, there's nothing that can be untouched. One of the other aspects that I live by is that everything is inextricably connected, and every thought and action affects the whole. And that's been a core truth that wisdom masters have taught since throughout history. And science has proven that through biocentrism. So that's where you hear about either a sibling on one side of the world does something and the sibling on the other side of the world does it. They've done it with cell structure. So it's there. So when I was looking at that,
we're all one is not just a concept.
No, it is not. That's the whole of the whole.
So when we are participating, even if we're not doing the killing of the animals that are, jerking on the slaughterhouse floor that make the beef jerky that people think is so benign.
Yes.
We are energetically connected to that being. And as my doctor that I study with, Dr. Gabriel Cousins, said, we're actually eating their astral body. So we're eating their suffering, we're eating their imprisonment, we're eating their abandonment and stealing of the babies, we're eating the rape of the mothers, we're eating it all.
Yes.
All.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a very popular meme that has been out for many years. I haven't seen it posted for a while, but it is in my collection. I've got a collection of probably a couple of thousand memes because I grabbed everything that came across the internet. And that's the one. It says, when you eat the animals, you are eating the terror, the fear, the slaughter, and just everything that you mentioned. So it is. That's all in there. So I'll make this a little bit shorter. So when I was posting like that, I was actually living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. My hometown is Philadelphia, by the way. So it was a great town to grow up in musically and culturally, and food-wise too. So when I went vegetarian, it was, okay, there's a lot of good food out here, a lot of vegetarian restaurants. So, so when I was posting a lot of these things on Facebook, because I was feeling that for many years before that, an artist has a responsibility. Mm. You, much like an influencer, a celebrity, you have a built-in responsibility to help guide and to help teach people of important aspects of our existence, of life. Bring to light the critical issues that are facing humanity and our planet. So that also was wrapped into a lot of the belief and a lot of the things and how I was approaching things. So when I was posting, a lot of the musicians in the community, the Atlanta community, which had a lot of great musicians, I played with everybody up there. And with that posting, then people were starting to drop away a little bit. And I noticed that they felt threatened. I was the only vegan in the music community that I knew of, because I was playing with all these folks, and I finally figured out I'm the only vegan. I may have had a couple of vegetarians that were in there, but I was the only vegan. So with all the posting that I did, and everybody saw the posting that I did, phone calls started to drop off for gigs. So I said, okay, that's the way they feel, then that's fine. I have no problem with that. So consequently, I found my way through, and I actually came out into some very interesting and very high level playing situations that were above what a number of the other people were doing. So I was playing with a world-class Turkish percussionist named Emre Kotan. I'm on one of his albums. We had a world group together, some incredible musicians. I ended up being the jazz pianist for the third largest arts center in the country, which is the Woodruff Arts Center in Atlanta. I played with symphony members, so I was their jazz pianist for several years. So things worked out as they do when you hold on to your guns.
Well, or let them go. Let the guns go, let the knives go. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's being guided in the right direction, and then really listening and staying full in our integrity without with the compassion of understanding that these people have been lied to as well as we have, about what's on our plate and how that impacts human, earth, and animal liberation, right?
Yeah.
They have been part of a system, a very corrupt system that has taught them, like that we need meat, we need milk. And the opposite is true. We know that to be true. But I would really love to hear how going vegan has interwoven into your life and has changed you somehow. So I know that you're connecting with a lot of vegan artists now. You were on our convergence with Vegan Queen V and Jeff
Yes.
Francis. Yeah, and Chris Hines, who's doing a
Yeah.
beautiful documentary on the history of music and veganism, which is a lot longer than we know. And it sounds like one of the great benefits of going vegan and really following your heart is who you've got to connect with. The other vegans, powerful, beautiful, passionate. That's the one thing about vegans, right? When you meet a vegan and then you meet an artist, a creative artist, and you add those two passions together, whoa.
Man, yeah, you get that explosion.
You get that explosion.
And that is life changing. It really is. When you're in that mode of living, it does. And that happened when I met Jeff Francis. Jeff and I were on LinkedIn. We had not connected yet, but I saw something that he had commented on. He saw what I commented on, sent a message. It said, hey, would you like to start a conversation? Because I liked what you said. I don't recall what it was. So that started the whole relationship. And we started conversations about the arts, what he was doing, what I was doing. That's when it all began. And that's when everything opened up. And that has been the journey that has culminated into the veganism and what I'm doing as an artist. So working with Jeff, that opened up all these new areas. We started our first project together was with Bite-Size Epiphanies. And that was started by Francesca Cook, who was a graphic artist. Bite-Size is no longer, it's kind of dormant right now. But she came up with the idea of doing these small, and that's why it was called Bite-Size. We were doing things 30, 40 seconds, 1 minute, because of people's attention span. We wanted to grab them quickly, put out a message, and just have it short and sweet. So the first one that we did was called Mother's Milk, and it was about the dairy industry. So Francesca put together the graphics and the motions. She's a very nice and very accomplished artist. So I put the music to it. We put the entire package together. And the first release coincided with Mother's Day in the UK. And interestingly enough, everybody, all the vegans I'm working with now are based in the UK. Of course, Jeff, is a Brit. Francesca, Chris Hines, Queen V, So,
there's a lot of vegans in the UK.
A lot of vegans in the UK, and I've always felt close to the UK for a number of reasons. With Brit humor going all the way back to Monty Python and earlier from that, so I fell right in with them. So we did Mother's Milk. So we released that on Mother's Day in the UK. Then we decided to release it worldwide, and we got in translations from about 25 different languages. So I edited all those in to the music track, and we released those coinciding with Mother's Days from countries around the world.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So yeah, that was quite interesting to have all those languages doing that same message. So that was the first project that Jeff and I really worked on. Then came up, we just started putting some of my music together with, of course, with his filmmaking, his photography, his poetry, and his lyrics. So we're in the process of where we actually are just getting ready to put out an ebook, which is a compilation of the lyrics. It's going to be about 500 plus pages.
Wow.
So what we are doing, we want to do a collaboration with artists around the world. So we decided to open up the lyric collection. Anybody that wants to collaborate with us, if they see the lyric, they get a certain idea about it. We have a few different genres. We have plans to do an album in a number of genres. We're going to do an R&B, a soul, a classical. The jazz album is almost finished, the first one. So we're working in those directions, but we want to open it up to people that may want to take the lyrics. They can do their own production with it. They can collaborate with us on a production. So everything will be done on an individual basis. So that's going to be coming out very soon. We're just doing the proofreading on the ebook at this point.
Wow, that's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's what I see when I come into the vegan communities is I find a community. And out of Climate Healers, we founded a community called A Million Vegan Grandmothers. And this is really interesting. Even if you live across the world and you connect with another vegan, instantly you feel like your family.
Yeah, you do. You do. That's the power of veganism. And with that, you are working in concert with one another. That's when a lot of the competition drops away. And you're not fighting each other. You're not trying to beat out the other person. You said, what can we do together to make things better? Because we all are working like-minded. So stripping away all of the garbage, so to speak, that gets in the way of people truly working together. So that's what we're doing. We offer these things for free. We want people to be able to work with us. We work completely pro bono in what we're doing. And we're inviting people, as many other organizations are. So the more you do it, the more you find more people who are willing to collaborate with you in a number of different ways. And it just gives you a tremendous feeling of, I know people use the word empowerment, but it goes beyond that. You have that universality of the togetherness with people on a genuine level.
And you get to use the written word and the intuitive, heart-centered written word with your incredible ability to create music on many levels.
No.
And then the art, the collaboration of I mean, I've seen some of Jeff Francis' art. One of my favorite is Alternative Nativity. And, if a painting speaks 1,000 words and then a poet could speak to 1,000 hearts and a musician could speak to 1,000,000 trillion cells of our being, the combination of those can create beautiful music together, music on a visual. And yeah, so my partner and I are writing a book. We're taking quite a bit of time to write a book that I had an inspiration to write called Grief Mapping.
Uh-huh.
And we're looking at Kubler-Ross's famous 5 stages of grief and playing around with them a little bit and seeing, maybe that's actually the very beginning of grief, to actually, want to go into denial, to want to bargain it away, to want to, get angry about it, to maybe get a little depressed and then just move into acceptance. And I know she didn't mean it quite that lightly, but what we had devised is after we feel all those as vegans and animal activists, then we need to move into another 5 stages. So our 5 stages are, the very first one is the felt sense shock. Because unless we allow ourselves, when we invite people into our world through music, through video, through art, we're saying, look, please just look and allow yourself to feel the shock of what you have been not told and what has been lied to you about. Allow yourself to feel it. And then we move into empathy and compassion, empathy for ourselves, empathy for all beings. And then the next step in the grief mapping is creative action, because unless we're going to take action and get creative, we can get stuck looping in anger and disappointment and maybe over posting, just like, please, please. But if we move into a creative way to process this shock and have empathy for everyone involved, including the people that aren't awake yet, then it moves it into this beautiful flow, this rhythm, this way, this harmony, and this collaboration of people coming together. And we find different pathways to heal. We find different pathways to heal together through creative action.
Yes.
That's what I see you doing, Darren. You've found people that have been doing this for many, many years, like you have, multi-decades, and you're bringing it together into creative action to bring forth to the people a way of looking at this that's not confrontational in that same way, that's not pointing fingers, but saying, please, please, compassionately just have a look.
Yes, have an open-minded look. And what you mentioned, Tammy, is so critical. I have a social media network that I purposely have built over many years. I have a global network of connections, everything from doctors, researchers, venture capitalists, the environmentalists, all the way down the line. And I did that so that I could get a larger picture of what's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing your art, you also have to obviously stay aware of what's happening. Conversation over the past couple of years is, how do we connect with what we call the general population? And what you mentioned, inviting them to take part, inviting them to take a look. So how do we do that? We have to have methods to do that. We have to have some vehicles to do that. Sorry.
Okay. Maybe that's your message, your vehicle. Is that one of your vehicles, Darren?
That's actually Jeff Francis calling from Portugal.
Well, I do not believe in coincidence.
Yeah.
You think that he portaled his way to you and he felt our connection right now and talking about him? Yeah. I love that. I love that was a confirmation that we're all connected.
Yeah. So inviting people in, and that's what's happening right now, because once I realized to be able to work with people that are like-minded and to be able to use these vehicles. And when you were asking me about the music, I also do sound design. So I just don't take a plug-in on my music programs and say, oh, okay, here's piano, here's strings, here's voice, here's other instruments. I do a lot of sound design specifically to make these sounds so that they inspire, that they have some things obviously are done very simply, but other things get quite complex with layers. I use the most powerful sound engine that's on the market around the world. And the depth of what you can do in this program, it's endless, what you're able to do. So on our Bonobo TV publishing site, which Bonobo TV, or bonobo.tv, with the words and music to inspire, we have a note on there that these have been meticulously mixed and meticulously put together. The best experience for them is using headphones, so that you can have that sonic between back and forth. So it's it has come full circle for me at this point. This is what I feel most comfortable with. This is where my greatest satisfaction is now. And using the music that way has really opened up. And when you were asking about what has the music done and my approaches, that's where it's come to. And it continues. Yes, when we were on the Convergence and you played the waggle dance, by the way, there's Mr. Pollen Pants right there. That's one of two pieces that my wife surprised me with, because it was so intense working with the waggle dance, because we were also working with something I don't think we mentioned, that we have the Atlas Vegan Community School in Uganda.
Beautiful. Who's
part of this project. We were not able to use the voices on the first track that we did with Jen Armstrong, Vegan Queen V, because it just didn't match up. And we had some issues with the editing. So what I've done is I've taken their voices, and tremendous amount of editing is going on. The same way with all the video, which Jeff is working on right now, that we got things stitched together. They have their own complete version, because you heard the waggle dance. The version for the Atlas students, it's completely different. It's more of an Afro pop type of an approach.
Hey, beautiful.
So I'm actually finishing up enough of the mix this week. Musisi Mike, who is the founder and director of the Atlas Vegan School, they are having a festival coming up this weekend. So I'm going to have that ready for them, so they're able to play it. They're very anxious to hear it. It's been on hold for a number of months because I had some issues over the summer. I wasn't able to work on production. So I finally got back to it and got some things aligned. So their piece is going to be coming out. But that was one of the two pictures that my wife surprised me with the day I finished the mix on the waggle dance. So she said, I was going to surprise you with this. They were not framed yet. So she just brought them in. She laid them out on top of my keyboard. And she said, and this is actually a local artist.
Wow.
She's done a whole series of bees. And in fact, here in St. Pete, we are known for our murals on buildings. They have mural tours, and she actually did one on the side of a jewelry store, which with the bees, and it's beautiful. It's huge. So that was a real nice surprise to happen. So the waggle dance is very much alive. The other current project that Jeff and I are working on is addressing the whaling in Iceland. And we wrote a song. It's called Heroes to Zeros. And actually, the Captain Paul Watson Foundation, we sent it to them. Jeff has got some contacts inside the foundation. They love it.
Oh, I'm so glad. I knew that was in the mix.
Yeah. So they are planning to do a video by the end of the year using the song. Martin Alquist from Vistopia, he's on it. Jen Armstrong, Vegan Queen V, is on there. We have another artist that's with us, Eliza Cleary. She's on there. I'm one of the vocalists, and Jeff is also a vocalist. I pulled him in. I said, Jeff, just do some of the things on there. And he sent his tracks across, and some of his voice, because you know Jeff's voice, the way he speaks. So when he was reciting, came out, it reminded me of Boris Karloff a little bit. Had a little bit of that darkness to it. So anyway, I got him in the mix. So that's the next one that's coming out. So yeah, we're real happy about that. It came out very good.
Tremendous amount of work, Darren. And
Yeah.
it feels so beautiful to connect with a person moving into maybe the last third of our lives, or we don't really know with the environment, the way everything's going in our ecosystems. But let's say we're moving into that stage of our life where we've collected a lot of stuff and let go of a lot of stuff, and then found a place where we settled in, and that's veganism, because veganism describes all of that. I thank you so much for your work and Bonobo TV publishing and the work that's to come forth. And the one thing I was saying to my partner yesterday is that I feel on fire. I feel like I have more creative energy than I ever have, and it just doesn't go away. He's used to single tasking, and I'm multitasking all the time. It's like, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and
Yes.
and I see that in you. And so there's no chance of us aging or worrying about that with that creative life force running through. I can feel that you're just so excited about your projects. So what would be the message that you would give people if they're feeling a little stuck and not able to move through the grief of the world? They're maybe stuck in that felt sense shock and not quite able to go into empathy and compassion through to creative action, to take some creative action that makes them feel alive amongst a world that's dying, So what would you say to those people? How can they just get on that feeling, get that feeling within? What would you say to them? What would be your one message to them?
That has come up a number of times through the years when I see people who are making comments and they're posting and they're serious. They feel very down. Even people who are on the verge of suicide, they feel so strongly about what's happening that they said, I think I would just want to unplug from everything. So in those cases, Tammy, do something with your whatever you're able to do. You have a craft, you want to write, you want to bake, do something. But the essence of all of that is to tap into the universal energy. And something that I use as a message to a lot of the folks that I communicate with, we are a global collective. Mm-hmm. And it's not an ego thing. It's not a holier than thou. And people need to understand that also, because they think that we have this superiority complex, and it's not about that. That's another message that also has to come out. Vegans have to stop the infighting that's going on. And I'm seeing a lot more collaborating. I'm seeing a lot more unity. So tap into, just go for a meditation for a moment. Relax, tap in, and know that that strength is always there that you can draw on, because it's palpable when you go into it. Know that. Talk to somebody if you need to, get a mentor, but just go inside yourself and realize that our collective is continuing to grow. Those millions it's just being added to each moment as people are making the realization and making the connection that there's something to be done, and their voice is very much needed. So we need you. Is the message to people.
And we need to find a way to do it with non-causal joy and love. As the grandmothers speak all the time, that our fierce love for our grandchildren, the grandchildren of all species, not just human, the grandchildren of all species, compels us to act out of love. And that love has to be first turned inward. So turning this suffering of the world inward for too long creates depression and creates inertia. but we take that love that we feel for our grandchildren of all species, the ecosystems and their home, the grandchildren of all species and their home, and we turn it into this collective love, as you talk about, Darren, and we go forth and multiply the message.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yeah.
And thank you, Darren, for your beautiful work. And I would suggest go on to Bonobo TV, publishing, listen to some of Darren's gorgeous music. And below, you'll also have access to his website. And when you're going into that meditation, as Darren suggested, put on some of this music that's been downloaded to this incredible vegan musician. And thanks again, Darren.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. We love you, and we appreciate everything that you're doing. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.